Bill Gates and the questionable optimism around climate change. Bill Gates and the questionable optimism around climate change. Bill Gates recently published a blog post urging a more optimistic approach to tackling climate change, arguing that focusing solely on near-term emissions reductions can divert resources from addressing pressing issues like hunger and disease. He suggests prioritizing improvements in people's lives and leveraging technological advancements, particularly artificial intelligence, AI, to navigate a warming world. However, critics argue that his message risks downplaying the severity of the climate crisis and prioritizing technological fixes over the needs of vulnerable communities. Shifting the narrative, from emissions to human prosperity. Gates' memo, released ahead of critical UN climate negotiations, aims to promote a more hopeful outlook. He contends that a doomsday outlook on climate change is counterproductive, leading to an overemphasis on cutting emissions and potentially hindering efforts to enhance global health and prosperity. He advocates for using metrics like the UN's Human Development Index as a better measure of progress, emphasizing the importance of health and prosperity as the best defense against climate change. His proposed solutions center on technological advancements, including AI-powered healthcare devices and mobile apps providing farmers with planting and fertilization advice. While these innovations hold potential, critics question whether they address the root causes of vulnerability and adequately meet the needs of communities already impacted by climate change. The paradox of AI and growing emissions, this shift in emphasis comes at a complex time for Gates and Microsoft. Despite Microsoft's commitment to becoming carbon negative in 2020, the development of energy-intensive AI models has ironically increased the company's carbon emissions in recent years. While Gates believes the benefits of AI outweigh the environmental cost, this presents a cognitive dissonance that critics find troubling. Missing the mark on vulnerable communities, the core of the criticism lies in the perception that Gates' approach ignores the lived realities of communities disproportionately affected by climate disasters. His assertion that climate change will not be the biggest threat to most people's lives and welfare is particularly contentious, especially given the numerous accounts of how climate-related events exacerbate poverty and vulnerability. When there's a typhoon, you can't fish. You can't work in the fields. A 17-year-old girl in the Philippines reporting on human trafficking in the wake of Super Typhoon Haiyan. For example, the young woman in the Philippines forced into abusive domestic work after Super Typhoon Haiyan destroyed her livelihood, highlights how climate disasters can push people into dangerous situations. Similarly, communities struggling with drought and unreliable harvests often lack access to resources and depend on traditional knowledge that is often overlooked in favor of technologically driven solutions. Questioning the suitability of AI-driven solutions, the belief that AI and technology offer a panacea for climate challenges has also been challenged by those on the ground. Gabriel Manyangad's Food and Climate Justice Manager at the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute notes that while AI can provide information, it may not always translate to tangible action. His group advocates for simpler, more accessible solutions like solar-powered water pumps, a necessity for farmers in drought-prone areas. Furthermore, some worry that Gates' agricultural agenda could exacerbate corporate control over food systems in Africa, increasing farmer debt and dependence on costly synthetic fertilizers and energy-hungry technologies. The future of food and climate must be shaped by those who feed their communities, not by billionaires betting on the next patented fix. Lauren Cardelli, a strategy coordinator at A Growing Culture. A call for climate reparations, instead of focusing solely on technological fixes and green premiums, advocates are increasingly calling for climate reparations, financial assistance, to compensate communities for loss and damage resulting from climate disasters. Critics argue that directing climate funds towards supporting the health and prosperity of vulnerable populations, starting with climate reparations, would be a more effective and equitable approach. In conclusion, while Bill Gates' desire to foster a more optimistic outlook on climate change is understandable, his focus on technological solutions and downplaying the urgency of emissions reductions risks overlooking the needs of the most vulnerable communities. The debate surrounding his message highlights the ongoing tension between technological innovation and the need for systemic change in addressing the climate crisis.